morning, everyone. Good morning and welcome to Alka and Rhea Show. Thank you so much for tuning in and joining us in today's episode. Rhea is going to take over the conversation, and Rhea and we talk about real estate and mindset, and together we bridge the gap for your success. And I want to just preface for the new people who are joining, I would like to know, what is the show about? And that's exactly what it's about. So real estate and mindset. So Rhea is going to take over the conversation, and I want to introduce myself. My name is Alka.
My name is Rhea,
and welcome to our show. Rhea, I'm going to pass the mic to you.
Thank you, Alka. And today's topic is a continuation of Pace Morby's book, Wealth Without Cash. So let me share my screen. Wealth Without Cash is very interesting. All right. So now today's topic is a continuation of the exit strategies to make money. In the prior discussion, we talked about one of the exit strategies to make money, and that was wrap exit strategy. Now, today is the second exit strategy to make money, and this deals with lease option. So the first one was wrap exit. Now we talk about the lease option exit strategy. So the lease option exit strategy, this is one of Pace's primary selling methods. Pace likes this path because Pace still owns the property after the deal has been made. So what that means, I'll explain in a little bit here. So you still own the property even though the deal, right, you have a potential seller, the deal has been made. So Pace has a property on Gold Lane. This is an example that he bought for $150,000 with only a $5,000 down payment. Now the interest is 3%, and including the principal, interest, taxes, insurance, is approximately $837 per month. So again, what is PT? Principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. And the total amount that Pace would pay is $837 per month. Now remember, this property, he only put a $5,000 down payment and he bought it for $150,000. And monthly, he is paying $837,000 per month. So the entry fee was another $10,000 cash. There were no arrears for this, so this was just cash to the seller, some maintenance, some minor repairs, and about $500 in marketing to find a buyer. So that what this means is that Pace all in, expenses is not a whole lot. So to get this cash down payment, you can either use your own money, raise your private money. So private money is from friends, families, or find a lease option fee, which is what Pace did in this case. So like I said, this topic is talking about lease option exit strategy in making money. For this overall deal to work, which is the lease option, Pace is taking over $145,000 mortgage as a seller or finance subject to deal. Why $145,000? Remember, Pace bought the property for $150,000 and he put a down payment of $5,000. Right? That's the down payment. So that's why you have 145, or Pace has 145,000 mortgage. Now, what did Pace do with this hybrid deal to make money? Pace went out and found a lease option tenant buyer. First, he found a tenant, and that tenant is becoming or will be a buyer at some point in time. So the tenant buyer. So right now, the tenant is leasing the property, right? And this same tenant will be the buyer at some point in time. So that will be the future. So that's why it's a lease option, because then there is a lease and his option to buy the property. So that's what he did here. Pace used to use Facebook Marketplace. Everybody, majority of us has Facebook. And so I bet you can also advertise in Facebook Marketplace, just like what Pace did, and some bandit signs. Bandit signs are those signs that you see when you're driving around. Those bandit signs are where you see in the houses, in the grass of the houses, for sale by owner, or for sale, call me at this number. So that's what Pace did. One, Facebook Marketplace, that's free. Bandit sign, that's also very cheap to find a potential buyer. Then that tenant buyer, okay, they agreed to pay Pace $185,000. So Pace take after repair value. What does after repair value? It also stands for ARV of $165,000, and then estimate the appreciation value over 5 years for the house with an option fee of $10,000. Now there's too many stuff going on in here. There's too many numbers. So what you have to understand, Pace, okay, bought the property for $150,000. Now your lease option, in this case, he wants to get $185,000. Pace wants to sell it for $185,000. So after repair value of $165,000, why $165,000? Remember, that's the ARV after repair value. Why not $150,000? Why not $145,000? Because you have the advertising, right? You have to fix some repairs, minor repairs, some maintenance. So that all adds up. And so that's why it's $165,000. $150,000 is the price he paid after repair value. After you do the repairs, the maintenance, the advertisement, it comes down to $165,000. And then Pace now is asking $185,000. So the lease up, the tenant buyer agreed to pay Pace $185,000. Now this option fee of $10,000, that's aside, okay? That's so $185,000 plus $10,000. That's the lease option fee. So that is a different fee that you're getting. Okay, $10,000 with an option fee of $10,000. So right now, if you are the if you're the tenant buyer, your all in would be 195. Oops, your all in would be, hold on. Your all in would be $195,000. Why? Because $185,000 the agreed price, and $10,000 is the lease option. Now the lease payment of this $185,000 property that you agreed to buy is $1,350. And then this lease option has a 5-year option. So that means you will be a tenant between 1 to 5 years, and then after you will need to buy the property at the 5th year. Okay, so you have a 5-year option. At this point, Pace got 2 contracts in place. What are the 2 contracts? A contract with the initial seller and a contract with the new buyer. So the contract with the initial buyer is the house, the original owner of the house. Okay, original owner that wanted to sell it for $150,000. And then your down payment is only $5,000. So you own the house only with a $5,000 down pay. And then you find the new buyer, your tenant buyer for this lease option example. So that's why it says that Pace has two contracts. One, he did this like back to back. One, you got to find the seller who is willing to sell the house to you at a low price. And then you find a new buyer, your tenant buyer, right, who wants to lease this house and then buy it at 50-year time. So the buyer, the tenant buyer, is leasing the property for an extended period of time. In this case, 5 years. And then after that, he will buy the property. So this is what you call 5-year option. He will be your tenant between 1 to 5 years, and then on the 5th year, he needs to buy the property. So why would anyone want to do this when they can either buy or rent? That's a great question. Now the answer is typically a lease option has a higher payment than a rental, right? Because you have those, 10,000 option fee, which you can add into the 1350. So there's always higher payment with this lease option. So why would they pay more? Why would they, is the tenant buyer, why would they pay more for the opportunity to own it at some point in time? Now, here is the answer. The tenant has most likely been paying rent for some time, and they've moved due to any number of reasons. It could be community, it could be work, their kids at school, and so on. Or they could have a bad, credit, right? It's one of the reasons why they could have a bad credit. Now, if they rent in an area, they know the rent will be raised the following year. So even though it's 1350 at this point in time this year, next year, be prepared that the rent will go up. Why? Because property taxes will go up, expenses will go up, repairs of the house will go up, maintenance of the house will go up. So that's standard. If you're leasing, that is standard that your rents will go up. Rents will go up. So in this case, if the tenant buyer likes the neighborhood and they know that the rents will go up next year, then it makes sense to do the lease option. The tenant, and here, the tenant is not kicked out, right? But now they have to pay more money. Now, but if they have that lease option, what this means is that the tenant, for this particular scenario, the tenant is not kicked out. It's just every year they have the option whether to stay in the place, but with a higher rent, or they have to move out. That's what it means, that the tenant is not kicked out, but they have to pay more money, more rent, because every year it renews, the lease renews, and they have to accept it or moved out. So they're not kicked out. Now, if the tenant, if they have a lease option, they lock in the rate, even though it's more expensive the first year. So what that means, they'll pay $13.50 for the first to 5 years. And then after the 5th year, then they have to buy the property. They have the option to buy the property. So they lock in that rate of $13.50 during the first 1 to 5 years. That's why some would do it, because it's guaranteed lock-in for this amount. The lease option tenant buyer is interested because then they have the option to buy at 5th-year time, but also because they're investing in the likelihood that the house rent rate will increase over time. And then what? They're locked in at this rate for the first 1 to 5 years. From their perspective, from the tenant buyer's perspective, they can save some money, and then they have the option to buy after the 5 years. Again, this falls back on situations. Everybody's situations are different. Maybe buyer has moved for work or for college, and their circumstances are still unstable. but they don't want to risk paying higher rent rates or feel forced to move annually. And that's why they agreed to do this lease option. From Pace perspective, they pay Pace, the landlord here, $1,350 per month. But Pace only have to pay $837 per month. This is Pace all in expense. So 1,350 minus 837 will give us 513 of cash flow, right? So this is Pace cash flow. So Pace has positive cash flow of 513 per month. And Pace has ownership of the house, and he still gets the tax benefits for the home because Pace still owns it. And that's why Pace would do this lease option. Because of the cash flow that you get, you still have ownership, you still get the tax benefit for the homes. Now, here are some questions you will get when working out this type of agreement, this lease option exit strategy. Does that 10,000, remember in the beginning we had that 10,000, that lease option? Anyway, it's too higher up. But remember, we talked about this 10,000, this option, this lease option fee. That's the 10,000. So does that 10,000 get refunded if they choose not to buy it, the property? No. This 10,000, so if you're the owner of the home, if you're the landlord, this 10,000 you get to keep. If you're the tenant buyer, you have to, take the risk that if you're not buying the property, if you're not proceeding with your decision to buy the property, that lease option fee is gone. Now, another question, will that 10,000 go toward the overall purchase price? What that means is, so no, it does not go to overall purchase price. So what this question is asking, if the purchase price is 185,000, this 10,000 gets deducted. Now your payment is 175,000, and the book says no. It does not go to your overall purchase price. So we are looking at 185,000 plus the 10,000 option fee. That's the option fee. So if you're the tenant buyer, you're looking at 195,000. Okay? So it's only meant, this 10,000 is only meant to secure the option to buy. Another question, do the payments of $1,350 go toward the purchase price? $1,350 is your rent. Does it go toward the purchase price? The answer is no, because these are two separate deals. What are the deals again? One is the rent. The $1,350 is a rent, and it's not the same as the deal, which is the option to buy in the 5th year. So they are separate. So that's why this $1,350 for rent cannot go to add up to your purchase price. So they can buy the home at 185,000, but they are paying rent to Pace during this 5-year period. That only is rent, and it's not added to principal. From their perspective, Pace can't do anything with a home as long as the lease is in effect. That lease option is in effect. What that means, Pace cannot sell it, Pace cannot kick them out. Because why? The lease is in effect. The lease option is in effect during this 1 to 5 years. This might not sound like a good deal for the tenant buyer, but they're locking in a rate that could otherwise change over time due to appreciation in the area. And it also depends on their perspective and their situation for a deal like this to work. So this is the tenant buyer. It depends on their perspective and their situation. Personally, Pace now raise private money for those entry fee amounts. So remember, entry fee was the 5,000 down payment to secure the property. So what Pace is doing is raising private capital, because Pace is relying on buyer to pay the option fee, adds some extra stress to finding the buyer in a short time period. So by having private capital, that takes off the stress. So when we start to scale, you and I, if we do this lease option strategy, we can focus on something out some of this wrinkle, smoothing out some of these wrinkles. But again, there are 3 ways to raise that initial capital. So you can choose that method that works best for you. Like any of Pace exit strategies, Pace overall goal, just like our overall goal, would be cash flow. But we need to decide what works best for you, what works best for me, the seller, and the buyer when you're making these types of deals. Pace said solve problems, create value, and try to be fair with everybody. Look for situations where everybody walks away content with the deal. And so that's the lease option strategy in making money. So let me know in the section below what your questions are. And
Rhea, I don't see you. Rhea, I don't see you.
Oh, okay. Let me all right.
There you go. Yeah.
Did you see my presentation?
I saw the presentation,
Okay,
but I couldn't see you. So I'm not sure if you dinged yourself out, but the presentation I see. Yeah.
okay. Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
probably I just accidentally turned it off, my video. But yes.
Yeah, maybe. But yeah, so I had a question about, when it comes to the lease option, how
Yes.
can people, can you transfer from a lease to another option, or does it have to, because once you're locked in, correct? Maybe I'm wrong, but then can a tenant, for example, do a lease option, and then further down the line, if they choose to maybe buy out the property, can they do so?
Yes. So you are given, with this lease option exit strategy, you're given 1 to 5 years to buy the
Mm-hmm.
property. If you're not ready to buy for whatever situation or problems you have with your own finance, after the 5th year, they have the option to buy it. So they need to make a decision after the 5th year, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So they can rent between 1 to 5. Now, if after the 5th year, they do not choose to buy the property, that 10,000 option fee that they provided is gone. And then the landlord cannot sell the property, right? The landlord cannot kick them out because the
Yeah.
lease option is in effect. So the landlord cannot raise the rent just because you're on the 3rd year. He cannot raise your rent because you have that 5 lease option between 1 to 5 years. But after the 5th year, then if the tenant decide not to pursue in buying the property, your money is gone, the 10,000 option fee is gone, and then either the landlord will keep you or you have to find another landlord.
Oh, find another landlord.
Yes, because you have only 1 to 5 years. It's not perpetual. So that
Oh.
1 to 5 years will end. So otherwise, the landlord can sell the property to somebody else if you do not execute the purchase to buy, or the landlord will let you renting it at a higher price point of rent.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a negotiation after the 5th year.
Oh, I see. Wow, interesting. Yeah, Pace Morby. I've heard a lot about him, and
Mhm.
like how he. I remember seeing a video like he was helping this homeless
Mhm.
woman, and how she was living on the streets for such a long time, and then somehow, he began working with her, and like she's got now properties. She's got like two properties because of Pace.
Wow, look at
And
that. Yeah,
I love how, he really wants to help people, and he
yeah,
wants to help the lower class.
yes. So that's his book, Wealth Without Cash. That's my topic,
Right.
The Wealth Without Cash by Pace Morby. So people without a lot of cash,
Hmm.
I don't know if you can see it, right?
No, okay, so about your background,
Yeah.
yeah. Mhm.
The people without cash can execute the strategies in the book to buy their either their first investment or to buy their own home. He talks about this thing, which I'm also discussing with you and with our listeners on how you can start buying properties without a lot of cash.
That is very good. That is so good to know. And thank you, Rhea, for sharing your insights with us. And so, thank you, everyone, for joining today's conversation with Rhea and I. We appreciate you tuning in week in and week out. And we will see you again the same time come tomorrow morning. Make the rest of the day the best of your day. And we will see you soon. Bye for now.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Alka.
Rhea.